What do you swear you saw, but don't have any proof of? When I was 10, we had a 14-year-old German Shepherd who was getting very sick. I was home alone momentarily as my mum went to the neighbors to pick up a book or something. Our German Shepherd came over, convinced me to walk outside with him, and started licking my hands. Looked at me and ran away, jumping fences, and never came back. He was so loyal and good to this day that no one believes me and thinks he was stolen because he would never leave. I'm almost certain that he did that because he didn't want us to see him die and wanted to go to the massive forest area and do his thing. I miss you, buddy. Those of you wondering why no one believes a kid on something that does happen a lot was that we lived in Iran at the time, and the dogs, especially rare purebreds, were usually stolen, so my family thought it was a result of that. I've had glasses since the 3rd grade. I was playing tackle football with friends after school. I wasn't wearing the glasses and tackled one of my friends. Really big collision. And for a second I regained full eyesight. Then I blinked and it was gone again. My sister and I both had this before. It's often unprovoked and a rare occurrence. We just blink and wham, our vision is 20/20 for a second. Then we blink too soon and it's over. I remember grocery shopping with my mother once when I was about 13 and I blinked and suddenly had perfect vision. I saw everything clearly and could read all of the labeled sections in the back. I then blinked again and everything was blurry. I was amazed and also extremely disappointed that it disappeared so quickly. I'd just applied to a job at a gas station on a major interstate route in the US, and I was leaving the lobby of the rest area building. When I pushed the door open and walked out, I saw a seagull take flight from the top of a lamppost on the far side of the parking lot, which was shaped like a rectangle, with the building at one of the skinny ends. The only reason it caught my eye was because the parking lot was empty, save 1 or 2 cars besides mine, and it was like pushing the door open also pushed a button to trigger the bird to take off, and the timing was perfect. So I'm walking down the sidewalk and I'm watching the seagull fly in my general direction following the edge of the lot, when it gets to the corner and turns so it's going to fly directly over me. I think to myself, no way. And sure as crap, I see the seagull drop one in midair just before it gets to me. It's flying a good 20-ish feet in the air, so I simply sidestep and watch as this giant blob of bird crap splats down onto the ground, directly where I was. So the seagull saw me walk out the door and instantly decided it was going to try to crap on me. I mean, I think by the laws of comedy, the interview should have gone really well, and you just had to think to yourself, nothing could crap on this day, as you entered the lot. Although, admittedly, it would have been more fitting if the projectile had actually hit you. Sometime in the early 2000s, my wife and I went to an Eminem concert at the House of Blues on Sunset in LA. Yeah, I know, they're tearing it down, and it sucks. I saw a lot of great shows there, including his Royal Purple badness. Anyway, the entire show, maybe 90 minutes, there was this guy dancing on stage in a full mummy suit, and he was doing really awkward and funny dance moves that you wouldn't expect from a background dancer at a rap concert. But hey, he's in a mummy suit, so whatever. The show ends and Eminem screams into the mic, "Do y'all want to know who the mother-frickin' mummy is?" And the crowd cheers. And he screams, "Dustin mother-frickin' Hoffman." And he pulls a zipper at the back of the costume, and out comes an extremely sweaty, 60-something-year-old Dustin Hoffman, and the crowd goes into a stunned silence for a few seconds and then erupts in cheers. My wife and I just kinda looked at each other in disbelief, and when I tell people that, they always say something like, "Oh, it must have just been someone they found who looked like him." But that guy was Dustin mother-frickin' Hoffman, and no, I have no proof. Not my story, but my brother's. He lost his wallet and was retracing his steps looking for it. A homeless man approached him at a coffee shop and said to him, "Don't worry, it's in the bathroom sink. Your wallet is in your bathroom sink." Later that night, he did indeed find his wallet at home in the bathroom sink. A few days later, he saw the same homeless man and thanked him for his help. The guy became really irritated and told my brother he'd never seen him before. Could have been a lucky guess, but I think magical bum makes for a better story. Went and got the mail from the previous day at like 7 a.m. No one was around, but this massive black dog was walking around my neighbor's Ford Windstar. By massive, I mean this dog's head went to the windows, and when his head was at the back bumper, his hind legs were still at the driver's door. When I was about 10, they started putting missing children on milk cartons. Every morning for a while, I was looking at this boy's face on the side of the milk while I would eat my cereal. Then one day a car went down my street while I was playing outside, and there was a boy in the back seat with his face up close to the window looking out. I'm 99% sure it was the boy from the milk carton. I told my parents, but they didn't believe me. Something similar happened to me. I was 5 to 6 and playing outside with other kids. All of a sudden, these two cars stop by a sidewalk. They grab a girl on a tricycle and speed off. Only her bike was left. We ran to my mom to tell her someone got kidnapped. She was cooking, somewhat listened, nodded her head, and smiled. Oh, really? And that was that. I think about it often. Never heard anything afterwards. That's why I've been wondering whether this was real or just my imagination. On the other hand, other kids were with me and they all saw it. I was at the Shed Aquarium in Chicago. I walked up to the cuttlefish tank and for some reason all 20 or so of the cuttlefish rushed over to me. It was a big tank, maybe 10 feet long. I walked the length of it and they followed me. I walked back, they followed. A few other people saw and tried it themselves. But alas, the cuttlefish only had eyes for me. My best guess as to the cause was the guy who feeds them is my doppelganger. When I was about 10 years old, I saw my old dog catch a crow out of the air and then just gently release it. Ball lightning. It was right after a thunderstorm passed by. I could see floating orbs in the sky. There were a couple of cars parked by an open field and people were watching this happen, so I parked and got out to join them. We all sort of just looked on in silence until they winked out one by one. There were at least 10 of them and they seemed to fly together in patterns. Sometimes they were fast, other times they slowed down or reversed directions. They seemed small, but I could tell this wasn't because they were far up in the sky. If I were to guess, they'd be about the size of a basketball, maybe a little larger. The whole ordeal lasted about 30 minutes. We then all got in our cars and left. I tried taking pictures, but it was dark and the lights were too faint to make out. I should have recorded a video instead. I noticed someone was recording them at the scene, so I'd kind of hoped to see it online at some point. But it's been 2 years now, so I guess not. One day, I was looking out of the window of my office and 4 semi-trucks drove past, one after the other. They were, in order, Costco, Costco, Cisco, and Cisco with an SY. Half the people I mentioned to don't care, and the other half don't believe me. Those guys definitely collaborated to mess with people, and I'm here for it. Was there maybe a nearby mega mall with all 4 of those department stores in it that the trucks were heading towards? Awesome. A chameleon escaped from my bag when my friend was giving it to me, and it leapt into a big pile of snow. I looked around for it for a while, but I couldn't find it, so I gave up. Several weeks later, the snow all melted and I was out there and found the lizard guy partially frozen to the ground. I peeled him off and put him in one of those little plastic tanks and set it by the radiator in my house. Within an hour or so, the lizard was hopping around the cage like nothing ever happened. It lived for several years after that and was known to my friend and I as Jesus the Resurrection Lizard. I'm sure there's some scientific explanation to this, like the lizard went into suspended animation or something, which is weird because I've heard chameleons are quite sensitive to temperature, but that being said, this is just bonkers. I was snorkeling in Hawaii once, and I swear I saw something that looked like a clear chameleon, but as soon as I got close, it buried itself in the sand. I still vividly remember discovering a new species. Before my sister was born, my parents found a kitten. They decided to keep it because they could find no owner. They named her Princess. Anyway, my sister is 4 years older than I am. We both grew up with this cat. She'd sometimes follow us and watch over us. My parents used to make jokes about how she thought of us as her kittens. Now, my sister wasn't very nice to me. It took a lot of people a lot of time to realize that she wasn't just nasty. It was full-on, emotionally scarring bullying. My sister is a narcissist, but that's not what you need to know. When I was too young to understand what was happening, I used to talk to Princess. She was like my version of a diary. I'd sit with this creature that was older than I was and tell her all of my problems. One day at a store, my mum told us she'd buy us each a lolly. My sister wanted a different one to me and grabbed my arm and clawed her nails down so hard that it drew blood. It hurt a lot and I was really upset. When we got home, I went and cried to Princess about how scared I'd felt. After a while, I calmed down and went and played with my toys. Princess ambled out of the room. A few minutes later, I heard a shriek and she ambled back in. Turns out she had walked up and scratched my sister's hand, then hissed at her before coming back to sit with me and watch over me playing with the toys. My parents assume that my sister provoked her, but I know. She walked out of the room right after I'd been talking to her and walked back in after the shriek. I can't prove it, but I think Princess saw how scared I was and showed me that she'd protect me. I never told anybody about my white and grey guardian apart from my current cat. I haven't thought about Princess in a while. She lived to be between 19 and 21, depending on how old she was when my parents got her. She lived with them for 19 years and was around 2 when they found her. I loved that cat. Funnily enough, my new cat was originally my sister's. She got him, then left him with my parents, and he slowly became mine. He likes to sit with me more than he likes her. When I was around 10 years old, I went down to a lake when I was on holiday. When I got down there, I vividly remember a massive ball of lightning just hovering, and then it struck the middle of the lake. I never ran so fast in my life back to the little house we were staying in. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I was out for a walk late one night. This was in rural Illinois, so there was nobody else out. I noticed from a distance that there were these squirrels just standing in the middle of the road. I thought to myself, that is strange. When I got closer, I noticed that there were 3 squirrels standing around a cat that was lying down. I thought for a minute the cat was dead, but when I got closer and walked past them, the squirrels and the cat followed me with their eyes, none of them moving a muscle. It was like, move along, nothing to see here. Still to this day, I think of just how bizarre that was. As a child, I touched some weird pest plant in our garden. I think it stung me. Then I saw everything in inverted colors for a short time. Then back to normal. I was in such a shock, I couldn't explain it to my mom. I just went to her crying. You probably touched a brugmansia. They're loaded with scopolamine and can cause you to see things that aren't there. Inverse colors are a common hallucination from them. Brugmansia are a very common garden flower, despite their effects, because only small children will be affected by contact alone. Did you have big orange flowers that hang downward in your garden? Brugmansia are terrifying. Not 2 days ago, I read a trip report about some dude who took brugmansia tea he made out of 2 leaves and 2 flowers. 1 leaf per 32 ounces of water is more than enough. And the guy ended up crashing knee first through a plate glass window and then ripped the back door to his house off its hinges with his own 2 hands. That crap is terrifying. The author, Christina Pratt, in an encyclopedia of shamanism, says that brugmansia induces a powerful trance with violent and unpleasant effects, sickening after effects, and at times temporary insanity. These hallucinations are often characterized by complete loss of awareness that one is hallucinating, disconnection from reality, and amnesia of the episode, such as the one example reported in Psychiatry and Clinical Neuroscience of a young man who amputated his own Johnson and tongue after drinking only 1 cup of brugmansia tea. I've never heard of this leaf before, and it is wild that something like this is apparently a common garden flower. I was also about to rave about how we ban green herb and not this, but it sounds like not many people would want to take this. When I was about 6, my entire family was helping to build my grandparents a new house. I was helping my dad move some really long 2x4s from the lumber pile when a mouse ran out from under the board I had moved. Out in the middle of the woods, mice were no big deal to any of us. I did a double take though because the mouse was frickin' blue. I don't mean the sun reflected off its fur and it had a blue sheen to it. I mean a brilliant, royal blue. He was running fast, but I got my dad to notice it too, and he agreed that the mouse was really royal frickin' blue. We've told multiple people, my mum included, and no one believes us. But we know what we saw. I slipped on icy stairs last winter, and I swear I saw my own butt crack as I fell. No one believes me. How did that go over? Hey mom, guess what? I saw my own butt crack today. Maybe if you pulled your own head out of your butt, that wouldn't happen. When I was about 10 or 11, we were having a get-together at Grandma's house for the holidays. All of us cousins played all day, and when night fell, we played hide-and-seek, while the adults smoked and drank up by the house. We stayed on the back of the property just having a good time. I was hiding in between a bush and the property fence when I heard the strangest sound. It was almost a scream, both happy and miserable at the same time. I jumped up and kind of shouted. All my cousins heard it, and we all saw it too. It was an animal on 2 legs, and it ran off with really jerky motions. Being the oldest by about 3 years, I calmed down the crying little ones and explained as best as I could that it was just someone trying to scare us. I've had nightmares about that sound. In my mind, it sounds like a grotesque mimicry of our joyous screams and laughter as we played. None of my cousins today will admit to even remembering the incident, although the adults remembered the commotion it caused. I've seen the Dogman too. Holy crap, I came here to write about it and I saw your story. I was camping in Michigan's Upper Peninsula. at J.W. Wells State Park. It was late, around midnight. Us kids were in a giant tent. There were 9 of us. Adults drinking at the campfire. Suddenly, there were headlights shining into our camp. A ranger pulled up and rushed over to speak to the adults in whispered, frantic tones. Not 2 minutes later, our parents were scrambling to get us out of the tent. We all piled into the van, scared. My mum explains that there are a family of wolverines in the campground that are aggravated over something, so the rangers want everyone in the vehicles. We're giggling and screwing around in the van for an hour when we hear this bone-chilling cackle, like a scream. It was loud. We all shut right up and were staring at each other, and I'm wondering whether a wolverine really makes that sound when our tent we were just in was ripped apart. We watched as something collapsed it and was thrashing around for what seemed like forever. All we had was the light of the campfire, myself and my 2 cousins staring hard into the darkness behind the van, trying to make out this wolverine tearing up our canvas tent. It went still and my dad and drunk uncle ran to the tent's remains, beating it with sticks. They didn't find anything. No animal, no nothing. The scream came again as they were kicking through the remains from the woods behind the van. My uncle pointed his giant craftsman flashlight immediately in that direction, and something furry standing on 2 legs took off running, howling and screaming and cackling as it went, hooking its weird angled arms above its head. I saw the flashlight shine in its eyes, and that was no frickin' bear. We slept in our cars and left as soon as the sun was up. We left the shredded canvas tent behind, and my mum snapped a picture. I'll ask her for it next time I talk to her if anyone's interested. The ranger refunded our week plus the night we stayed, and gave us a truck bed full of firewood. I think the adults knew it wasn't wolverines. When I was 5, I woke up from my sleep and saw a man sitting on the stairs watching me. I wasn't scared though. There was something tranquil about it. I just watched him and he watched me for what seemed like 10 minutes. Then all of a sudden, he was gone. A few days later, I found out my dad was killed in Europe. I live in Canada and my parents were separated. There's pictures of me with him when I was just born, but he left shortly after that. To this day, that's the only memory I have of my dad, a ghost watching over me. I don't believe in ghosts, but I know what I saw. I've never told anyone before except my mum. My mum used to see her dead sister standing at the end of her bed, watching her for years after she passed away. It was always peaceful and tranquil, she says. She liked seeing her. But then one night it just didn't feel right. My mum got scared and shouted for her to go away. She never came back after that. Well, that's quite enough supernatural for me for one day. No thanks, dead relatives. I don't need house calls. You can all stay in Bumper Car Valhalla or wherever you are. My mum, dad, and I were driving through rural Alabama late one night, headed to see family for Christmas over 10 years ago. We were in a Ford Explorer. Mum was driving and Dad and I were sleeping. I woke up for a moment in the back seat just in time to see what looked like a buffalo dead in the road, and then the Explorer went up and over the dead buffalo and it scraped the undercarriage of the car. I asked my mum in my sleepy days, "Was that a buffalo?" To which she replied, "I don't know." I closed my eyes. My friend and I were watching basketball in the early days that Charles Barkley was a panelist. He was apologizing for calling a team midgets and saying that he knew it was offensive. But as they were going to commercial, we both heard him say over a hot mic, "Besides, they shouldn't hate me, they should hate God." My friend and I were amazed and convinced he would be fired. But not only did we never hear about it again, the clip doesn't even exist online anywhere. It's as though we had a double delusion. One time when I was really young, like maybe 10 years old, I came home after school and was making myself a salami sandwich. I pulled the bag of salami out and took out 2 slices. I slapped the 2 slices together, and suddenly they became one. I tried my hardest to separate them, but there was no seam or anything that I could split them up with. I even showed it to my mum, but not a single person believed me when I told them. I had fused 2 pieces of salami together. Cold-cut welding. I'm in line at a cafeteria. The guy in front of me is holding out a pudding cup. Someone walking by stumbles and falls into pudding cup guy, knocking his pudding cup out of his hand. While everyone is looking at stumbling guy, the pudding cup goes a good 2 feet straight up in the air. Pudding cup guy is totally focused and at the last second, turns and catches the pudding cup behind his back. He looks at me, smiles, and that was that. No one else saw it. A monkey jumping from car to car on a busy street. I could probably draw a sketch of it even though this happened about 5 years ago. Definitely one of the most odd things I saw. Unfortunately, everyone thinks I'm telling a bad joke when I explain what I saw, or they just nod it off and continue not giving a frick. In 1994, on a farm in the southern Midwest United States, 5-year-old me has this huge yellow lab, sweetest dog in the world, who one day suddenly lost her crap barking and ran outside. Being 5, I followed her and watched her run out into the cow pasture, where the cows were suspiciously nowhere in sight, and she went toe-to-toe with a frickin' grey wolf. That area at the time was definitely not wolf country. Coyote, sure, but there's no way that was a coyote. The thing towered over my lab, and I'd seen plenty enough coyotes to know that this thing was not one of them. My lab barked her damn head off right in his face, and after about a minute he tilted his head and then just turned around and disappeared into the woods. Found all the cows at the opposite end of the pasture circled around the 2 calves we had. They were never terrified of coyotes, and they had no fear of domestic dogs. The Labrador literally climbed over them when they laid down and would tug on their tails. The cows gave no fricks. I'll go to my damn grave saying it was a wolf I saw, but nobody believes me, of course. I've spent years researching wolves and wolf hybrids, but every picture I've seen of both the animal and the paw prints he left behind says it was very, very, very much more wolf than coyote or dog or even a mix. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, or if you want some vibey music to put on in the background, check out easymode. If you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Everything linked in the description.